Well, just a little bit summarizing the story. I had the feeling. So for me, it looked like this. There was the situation that they had to get back somehow the girl, and the story was going on really well. There was the first haste, and then they tried to find other ways. And at a certain point of the movie, they got the info about the daughter of. I'm here. They got the info about the daughter of Elena. And for me, that was the point where the tension just, you know, disappeared or went away. Because from there on, there was just a Western scene, and I knew that or they're going to kill each other or they're not, but it didn't really matter. So, for me, it was a bit, pity that that the story was, how could I say, cut at that point where they got the info about the daughter of Elena. And I think it's a matter of writer's choice where you place this info. So, it was a really clear story from that point. What do you think about it? Or why did you place that info at that point and not on the very early point or very late point of the movie?
I followed you. I don't understand your language up. I followed you
I'm
up
sorry.
until the collapse of tension. You said, can you bring
Yeah.
it?
Why did you put that particular scene? Where does it? What's the scene again? 'Cause
Yeah,
When
just
I'll
it's not really.
apologize,
It's
I
not
haven't seen
really.
the movie
Yeah,
yet.
that's fine. It's not really a scene. It just that point of the movie where the guys got the info about the daughter of Elena, and that seems like the solution for them. Like, oh, okay, then we kidnap her, and then we just need to change the two girls.
Yeah.
And until then there was like a nice story with full of tension, how they resolve, how they can get back. And then it was just cut.
It's funny you say that. You're the only one I've ever heard. Everyone said that the film has a certain degree of tension. No one's questioned that one. So I'm trying to deal with it now because I have to go back. Benicio comes to the ranch to straighten things out with Dennis. Dennis convinces him that they can make more money together than apart, and by selling the daughter of Salma, because Dennis hears that Salma's come to the Indian reservation, that she's on America, and immediately his mind is thinking, this is a way I can arrest Salma, right? He's thinking about the ending already in Dennis's mind, and he's trying to get Benicio his $3 million back, but that's small time for what he's thinking about. Dennis is thinking big. Not only is he trying to survive Benicio, but he's saying, wow, these kids, these fucking dopes, these war psychopaths, they're in love with this chick, he says. They want their chick. They don't give a shit about money. We can take the money and we'll let them have her chick back, but we'll get Salma on top of it. And the only way to do that is to sell them the information of where Magda is, because that is what matters to Salma, her daughter. And Benicio tells Travolta, she's here to see her daughter. That's her weakness. She came up to the north, to Indian land, to see her daughter, not to do business. So once John Travolta figures out what all the motives are for the people, it makes sense. He's going to sell Magda to the boys for the $3 million at the beach scene. They're going to give him, they take the deal. He'll deliver them Magda, which will set up this showdown with Salma and her group and bring O. They'll transfer the prisoners, and he'll come in and clean up the whole operation and arrest Salma. Everybody gets out with something except for Salma.
Now I
To
see.
me, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
I understand, maybe it didn't connect with you, but
Then I would change a little bit of the question, because now I see your point, and it seems like the sujet or the story is the story of the two guys until this point, when Dennis gets this info about. I'm sorry. So the thing is that the story turns into Dennis's story instead of the guys, because how could I say? I don't know if you see the point. Like there was a story of two guys until that point, and then the point is how Dennis can survive the situation from there on. And
No, because I'm telling you what Dennis is thinking, but Dennis doesn't become the central character. He's just a major operator behind the scene. We don't see Dennis again until the desert. After he sells Magda to the boys, we don't see him until the desert scene. So he drops out of the story. I don't know how you can get confused. I'm still following the boys and trying to get them back with O.
Thank you. Next question there. Yeah.
When developing the story, how concerned are you with structure? It seems to me that it's a huge luxury when you shoot scenes with Uma Thurman, as you mentioned, and then you decide to get rid of them because they didn't make the movie tight enough, or you didn't want diversions. So my question is, when you develop a story, obviously you're going for energy, you're going for surprises, for strong characters, but do you give the final shape to the film in the editing, or you do as much as you can while you're developing the story itself?
Both. I mean, there is a budget for the movie. If I can shoot extra scenes inside that budget, that's fine, as long as I do it. If I start to go over budget with extra scenes that are going to get cut, then I'm in trouble. I would lose my own self-respect. So this was all budgeted. In fact, I'll tell you a little story. I did call the head of Universal, and I said to him, I would like to cut, there were 3 scenes. I said they will not be in the movie. It was a day and a half of shooting, and I needed it for something else. And the president of Universal said to me very nicely, she said, but I like those scenes. I'm not sure, you might be right, but please shoot them. So this is one of the few cases where the studio head tells you to shoot a scene you don't want to shoot. And I was right, I did end up removing those scenes from the movie. Uma Thurman was a luxury, yes. And if I had been more rigid and disciplined, and I perhaps would have seen it coming. I would have seen it coming because it put the movie out of shape to have only Blake tell her backstory and not anybody else. But that one I made it, but I shot it in budget and on time.
Without trying to analyze your oeuvre, basically there are 2 types of scripts that I can see you've written. One type where you do observe more strictly to the rules of storytelling. In other words, you're more economical. Midnight Express, Wall Street. So you go from point A to B to C, and we get somewhere. As opposed to JFK, now, again, it's not criticism, I'm asking an honest question. JFK, born...
On 4th of July.
Natural born killers and savages. You pile up things, and then you shape your material as you go along, or later in the editing. Do you see any truth to that?
Well, I see what you're saying, but I'm not sure that in the making of it, it doesn't work the same way, because I am on JFK telling a story. But it's perhaps because of the script a little more convoluted and labyrinthine. Same thing is probably true with Savages. It was 6 people. So once you're a 6-person movie, you have to veer off sometimes into these 6 people. Same thing is true about Any Given Sunday too. There were subplots and subplots. And personally, I like subplots in a movie. It kicks back to theater and novels. But I have to say, Born on the 4th of July was, for example, straightforward. I wrote the script the first time completely involuted, because that was the way the book was, and it was not quite working. We'd go back and forth in time. And eventually, Billy Friedkin, who I was working with at that time, the director, said, write it straightforward, straightforward. And I did, and it worked better. So, but it's an extremely complicated movie because of the set pieces, the size, the eras that were changing. So, I don't look at it the way you do as a labyrinthine. I'm not trying to be Vladimir Nabokov, I'm saying, but I do like that style of movie making.
I am really, because in the name of this event is for screenwriters, that's why I'm pushing the issue of structure. Are you concerned as you go, as you're writing, or with structure, or you write out whatever is in your mind about the story, and then you shape it later as you shoot and as you edit?
I would say to you, structure is the most important, but if you make it too rigid a rule on structure, you're going to hurt yourself because you won't allow yourself to improvise that. Sometimes some of the greatest scenes you do are stuff that grew out of something. It just grows. And let's say you wrote a scene and you're sitting around a rehearsal room, and an actor says something happens, and it becomes a little more than it was. So I wouldn't cut yourself. I wouldn't say to the group, "Look, this is not in our structure." No. For example, on the set, Benicio, who always had hundreds of ideas, he was very. Said to me one day, he said, Esteban, he was talking about the young boy who he works with in the movie. In the script, Esteban goes all the way through, almost to the end, where he plays a role at the end of the movie. He said, he came to me one day, he said, Esteban, let me kill him. I said, well, that's not in the structure. He said, yeah, I know, but we don't need him. And I said, I thought about it. Yeah, he's right, So we killed him off in the middle of the movie. And it's a good shock because he didn't think it. But it did achieve a purpose. He didn't need him after the movie. Yeah, there was a superficial reason he could have stayed in the script. So that kind of a readjustment, if you're too structured, you can hurt yourself. Structure, I love structure. That's, to me, it's how you tell the story is everything. Because you can take the most boring subject in the world and you can make it exciting. I mean, honestly, the JFK assassination can really be boring if you get into some of those labyrinthine documentaries I've seen. And the same is true about well, look.
Okay, let me ask my final question regarding developing a story. Do you map out the whole film before you actually sit down to write the film? I'm giving you an example to the contrary, which is Tarantino. He has said many times that he starts writing, he loves the music of the dialogue, and then he develops the story as he goes along, but he writes the screenplay without having mapped out the structure and the ending. So he wants to be surprised in the process. How about you?
Yeah, I would like to be surprised. But I would like to have a sense of where we're going. I would say I'm open to surprise, like I am to tight. Remember yesterday I said tight and loose, tight and loose. Don't make too many rigid rules for yourself, because sometimes characters can take you to places you didn't know. A character can do something that you didn't expect, like Benicio killing Esteban. Benicio also said, let me rape her. Okay, so that was going to be a tough one because, Blake is not going to like being raped. So I said, well, if we do that, then this does this and this and this to the story, because how is she going to meet Elena, Salma, and not let it be known that you violated? Well, I'll rape her, drug her, and then I'll rape her. But I won't tell her until later, and I'll show her the video. Okay, that's a development that occurs inside the movie. Some people hate it, some people get it. I loved it. So stay loose. The other word is, anyway, I can't remember. It's fun to write out scenes and to have, but then sometimes if your characters go on for 6 pages, let's say you have a great scene going and it goes 6 pages, that is a disbalancing of the whole thing. And so how many scenes is a movie going to be? If you're going to have long dialogues, you're going to have less scenes. I guess Tarantino has, 10, 15 scenes in a movie. He doesn't do that many, but he makes them longer. Each one, he makes his point. So there's a style. And it's not necessarily a realistic one, but it makes for an interesting movie.
Thank you. Who's next? There, the woman in the black T-shirt.
Hi, I'd like to ask you about the visual techniques, a bit away from the structure, because actually that made me love the movie. Actually, I admit I like it. I like the movie. So I'm just wondering, when did you develop these visual techniques, and what was the intention behind? I told you what it caused to me. It made me a bit distant of the story, so I was surprised that I could watch all the brutality, which normally I can't. So it gave me a kind of distance from the story. So I was not involved. I've seen, but these kind of visual techniques put me a bit away from the film. So I was, it's not like Black Swan that I could not watch the movie, because I'm a great audience, because if something is happening, I didn't see the half of the movie. But this time, I could really see it, and the visual techniques was the cause for me. But I'm just wondering if you had any intention with these visuals, and when did you decide to do this film like this?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what visual technique you're talking about.
Like how do you start the narration when we see this floating things, and the whole thing is because it's about drugs. So that was one of my idea, that because I don't have any experience, how do you see when you are under drugs? But maybe that's one of the vision that you see when you are using it. So I mean, I wasn't sure that it comes from that kind of experience, or that was something else, why you use this kind of floating. There was a sort of slow motion. I mean, when you go back and you see these close-ups, the hairs and the water, so everything which made this story a bit irrealistic. So, and even Salma Hayek figure for me. So I'm just joining to Attila when he was saying that sometimes I wasn't sure that it's a sarcastic character, or she's real, or you wanted to sometimes make jokes with us. So just don't believe it so much that she's real, because I wasn't sure sometimes that she could be a real character, for example.
It's a tough answer. I don't know that I can answer the question. Every scene has a style, you know. Obviously, there is an element of drugs, a marijuana dream aspect to it in some scenes, and you feel the smoke, you feel the music. There's a mood. The mood on Elena was not. There was a blur. She comes into the movie blurry, because we don't know who she is. That's a technique, but it didn't associate her with drugs. But she is the drug queen. So, but you know, the colors, the dress, the production design, the lenses, the camera work. These are 1,000 little decisions that are made, and it's kind of you know, once you have the script, these are intuitions that you have. Where do I put the camera? Where do I move? I can't answer that question any other way than just, I didn't set out to make a technique that would distance you from the movie. That's your subjective reaction. By the way, I'd like to go back to your thing, just because I thought one thing I meant to say to you. I have reached a place in the movie, often later on, once I know the structure pretty well. I've worked on it, and I have pages, let's say a few key pages where it's all laid out. And then I start to make the changes. But in the editing room also, we use a system with cards. We put cards on the wall, and we have all the scenes listed, what happens, so you can see it all quickly on one billboard effect. Huh? No, more pages than cards, but yeah, but I have, but I'd like to put it all together at one point. And then that changes, because it becomes it's like redrafting. But definitely, I love, that's the structure that you're talking about. It's a beautiful thing. But structure, when it lays out on a page, sometimes doesn't work. It works here, but then when it's not emotional. Very tricky, and that it takes, you have to redraft the structure. Don't be afraid to redraft the structure in the middle of your story. And even in the editing room, don't be afraid of redrafting. Structure is nice, it keeps you on a path, but it cannot be rigid.
And can we return for a bit to your visual concept or technique? We already talked about it yesterday, about your shot list and how you break down a scene into setups. So can you tell us something about it? How you show a location to the audience? How do you decide where to put a camera, and how many cameras do you need? Is it a little too much? How do you decide how to cover a scene?
Very few people here use shot lists or understand the need for it. They get on the set and then they sort of improvise or figure out how to shoot the scene. That's a luxury that I think Hollywood can't afford, because
It's not always true in here as well.
the director has to be prepared. And that's one of the things that here we're trying to really emphasize, is to start thinking about what that movie will be and how to get there.
These are tough questions for me to answer. You're talking about, the cells inside the body. It's kind of the shot list is the way you see the scene. You've written it, rewritten it. Now and you know who your actors are. You've rehearsed it, and it keeps refining itself until you get it down to its basic minimum. How can I best shoot this scene? How can I best represent these emotions? How can I best tell this story as quickly as possible? How can I make my points? And everything is dictated by that. It's the storytelling. So if the camera can encompass, if one shot, by movement, by blocking, by changing the actor's position, by running people in front of the camera and past the camera and through the camera, you can achieve 3 shots in one. It's economical, and if it works and it keeps the dramatic focus on the story, it's a wonderful thing, because it saves enormous amount of time. So sometimes you've done, let's say, 3 shots, and then you find you could do it all in one. That's a eureka moment. That's wonderful. I like that. Sometimes you approach a scene. I said yesterday I would do it in priority. I would go for the hardest things first, because, but obviously there's a certain order to a scene, and if there's an emotional climax to a scene, I don't think you want to shoot your climax first. I think you want to build to it through your shot list. It's not to say, let's say you had 7 shots and it has a very peak moment in the 7th shot. I would say to you, pace your day, see how it's going with the actor, see how it's going with the crew, the lighting, and let's say you're moving slowly, and somehow your instincts are saying, I don't think we're going to get 7 shots today, something's wrong here. I'm going to somehow get to the point faster. So you go shot 1, you do shot 2, fuck it, you don't do shot 3, you jump to shot 5 and 6, because you want to pump the end, because you don't think you're going to get it. Then you do the ending. Let's say it doesn't work. You're in the hole. The light's going down. What do? You go back and you do it another day maybe, or else you come back earlier before it gets too late, and you shoot shot 3, 4, and 5 that you didn't do because you thought you could skip it. So you have to move. It's a juggler. A director is on the set, is juggling all the time as what he thinks the right moment is. Is the actress ready? Is she upset? Is she... she takes too long with her hair and her fucking clothes, or the actor is, he's not very good today, and he's not doing his job. So how do I shoot him? Maybe I'll go over his shoulder instead of on his face or something. There's always, you have 1,000 tricks you learn, and take shortcuts when you have to, because shortcuts can save your ass. But believe me, I think Murphy's Law does apply. Everything that can go wrong on a movie set will go wrong.